Hey guys, how's it going? It's Al. Welcome back to a cage match, our head-to-head battle for Draftkings on week 15. I've got Scott Barrett from fantasypoints.com joining us today. He was on the cage match last year. He wanted to come back this year once again. A brave man in his own right. If you guys play head-to-heads on DraftKings, you know that you're always going to have a lot of overlap between your lineup and the other people. Like it's a very projection-driven space at this point, and everybody's going to play the best plays. But what we do is we're going to use the salaries on DraftKings, and we're going to kind of draft these teams in a schoolyard fashion, like you did back when you were in like 5th, 6th, 7th grade. First and 1, second and 2, and then the rest of the way. Scott has chosen to take second and 2. We're playing for $100 donated to charity. And we're playing for the same charity. We'll get to that right after the bumper video. So we can't have any overlap in this lineup. Once I draft somebody, he can't pick them. If he picks somebody, I can't take them. We're going to have two completely unique lineups, 9v9, without any sort of overlap whatsoever. It leads to some interesting decisions, as I'm not about picking the optimal lineup when it comes to the cage matches. When it comes to my games, I want to have some... Joe Jacobs, thank you for $25 donated to No Kid Hungry. You can go to smizzle.tv/charity and donate. We are over $28,000 raised. If we get to $35,000 raised in the next couple weeks before New Year's, I will be adding another $25,000 myself to the pot. I've already committed $40,000, and hopefully if we can get to that $35K range, we will together be at $100,000 raised for No Kid Hungry on the season. So as I said, no overlap. We're going to do what we do. We're going to pick our teams. Thank you guys very much for being here. Drop a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel. We just hit 50K, and I want to see if we can get as high as we can get, obviously. So that one little subscribe button really helps the channel a lot. Ring the notifications bell. Leave me a reply down below. Let me know who you think drafted the better lineup for this weekend. And let's go!
He's a legend.
Hey, Scott. How's it going, man? How you doing?
Hey, Smiz. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad that you decided to come back. So you DM'd me a little while ago. You're like, hey, man, you afraid to play me in the cage again this year? I was like, I might have a spot for you.
I talked to a lot of people around the industry. They said, Al will never lose back-to-back. It can't be done. But I'm here to test my luck.
Look, it's a highly unpredictable game that we play here in daily fantasy. We try to make a little more predictable, but nobody's going to predict the future with 100% accuracy. No matter how good we are or how much regression we apply to our models or whatever, there's going to be randomness, especially when you don't get to pick the optimal lineup. But you do a great job every week of trying to predict expected fantasy points and everything else. So why don't you tell our viewers where they can find your great work?
Yeah, you can check us out at fantasypoints.com. We have an early bird special, 30% off. You get the remainder of this season, the postseason, for free, and then 30% off for all of next year. One of my articles, the XFP report, out today, that will be free to all. You don't need a subscription for that, so check out all of that.
Awesome. And they can follow you on, are you just Twitter? Are you Twitter centric at this point?
Yeah, that's right. At Scott Barrett DFB on Twitter.
There you go. At Scott Barrett DFB on Twitter. So you've left me the number one pick. We are both going to be playing for No Kid Hungry, as I said in the intro. Smizzle.tv/charity, all lowercase. We'll take you to the Tiltify link. If you donate before the end of the year, if you donate anytime, it's 100% tax deductible. They will send you all of the paperwork by donating through Tiltify. That link is smizzle.tv/charity. So if you've been a winner this year, or if this content has helped you out, definitely head there and see if you can be a part of something that's bigger than yourself. Every single dollar helps. 1 in 6 kids struggles with food insecurity in our country, and No Kid Hungry does a great job of providing school breakfast and lunches to help them be better students when in the classroom, as well as providing in-home care, especially for the past year and a half with COVID. So great charity that I am happy to support, and hopefully you will be too. Going over to my team. This is our head-to-head. Smiz Gang Listener League, by the way. Smizzle.tv/league if you wanted to get involved in that. Same link as always. Bookmark it. My first pick. So I believe that a little bit of value opened up. I think that it's a weird slate, Scott, honestly. It's a really weird slate that I don't love because of all this other stuff, right? Like all the COVID stuff and the Saturday. Like, do you like the Saturday slates?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I don't. I don't because I like more games on the main slate. So like losing 2 extra games a week hurts me to my soul. It hurts me as a content creator because now I got to make extra content throughout the week. It also kind of makes the main slate a little bit more watered down. So while there is some value to be had, we're lacking in really high priced targets, especially at running back. Nobody over 7,800. But I believe that some extra value opened up at wide receiver in kind of a high scoring environment. And so while there was a value play that I liked a lot, Emmanuel Sanders, like this could be dangerous for me because like it may blow up. Like if Manny Sanders plays, this hurts, right? Like at least a little bit. But if Sanders is out, they said it'll most likely keep him out. If he's out, then I think that elevates Gabriel Davis to a prime time starting role in a really high-powered, pass-centric offense against a defense that shined early, but like I don't think they're ready to defend what the Bills bring to the table. So I'm going to lock in value early with Gabriel Davis at wide receiver and go from there. Thoughts?
Yeah, so I think that was an amazing pick. He scored 15.3 fantasy points last week on 9 targets, 2 in the end zone, 3 inside the 5. And so what do you do with Emmanuel Sanders out? He's run a route on 40% of the team's dropbacks, averages 7 XFP, 7 fantasy points per game. Do you just double that, 14? That makes him look like an awesome value. Do you just take what Sanders has gotten this year, wide receiver 36 by XFP per game? Do you look at what he did last year when he played in a full-time role, 10.4 fantasy points per game? And so like any way you want to look at it, just like a clear and glaring value priced as just the wide receiver 60, 3,700. So that was going to be one of my top picks. I think that was a great move by you.
Thank you. I mean, I like the pick, and I don't know what the answer is. Like, I'm always okay saying I don't know. So, like, I don't know what he's going to do. My assumption is going to be, with the NFL being a next man up league, it's easier to change one person's role than 2, right? So, I would assume that Stephon Diggs will play the exact same role that Stephon Diggs plays, and Beasley will play the exact same role that he plays, and basically, you just move out Sanders and you slide in Gabriel Davis into that role. I'm not saying he's the same exact receiver. I'm saying he will fill that position on the field. And then it's just up to, will he get the volume he got last week? Because if he gets 8 targets, as reported by DraftKings here on his player card at 3,700, that's more than enough to satisfy. Without any other information, if you tell me Gabriel Davis is getting 8 targets this week, I'm in at 3,700.
Yeah. I had touchdowns in back-to-back games, had 100 yards a few weeks ago on just like 30% of the routes. And, Sanders hasn't done much, but he's also 34 years old, and the volume he's been seeing has been really strong. So arguably the best value of the slate. I think that was a great pick by you.
Thank you. On to you for 2.
Yeah. So you said you wanted to lock in value early. And so I want to do the same thing. This guy, I think, is the best value, one of the best values of the slate, but he's not cheap, but he is a value. And that's Cooper Kupp. He averages 23% more fantasy points per game than the next closest wide receiver, Davante Adams. He's just $100 more. And he's priced at 9,000 like a high-end wide receiver, but not quite like a wide receiver on pace for the most fantasy points of all time. Makes him look like an insane value, 27.7 DraftKings fantasy points per game. If he just hits that this week, then he'll provide 3.1x value. Davante Adams, in contrast, 2.5x value at his per game average. So I don't know why anyone would play Davante Adams this week when Cooper Kupp is just the clear, alpha, most valuable player in fantasy, the Christian McCaffrey of wide receivers this year. Amazing consistency, at least 90 yards in 12 of 13 games. Then he has a dream matchup. Seattle is the premier slot funnel matchup. That's where he runs naturally 67% of his routes. We saw Brandon Cooks move to the slot last week to take advantage of that soft matchup. Really good against perimeter wide receivers, but really vulnerable against slot wide receivers.
So I, for one, am happy that Matthew Stafford finally has a premium wide receiver to throw to in his career, because he's never experienced throwing to a very good wide receiver like Cooper Kupp. You know, it's nice. It's nice for him to finally, it's Cupatron. It's nice for him to finally have a solid wide receiver to throw to. The replies on YouTube are going to be priceless, because people are going to oh my God, what are you at Calvin Johnson? Like, I know, guys, sarcasm. It's a joke. So you locked in Cooper Kupp. I love Cooper Kupp this week. And I mean, I play Cooper Kupp every week, but like Cooper Kupp is not somebody I like to fade. But there's merit to playing Adams in a tournament. I agree with you in cash. Like Cooper Kupp you're going to lock him in, especially with extra value opening up at wide receiver, and as many cheap running backs as there are out there between like 5,000 and 6,500. So like Kupp is almost a must play in cash this week.
Yeah. So can I take my next guy?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So I just said, I don't know who would want to play Adams this week, and that's me. So I'm going to also
go both.
I'm going to take both.
Wow.
Think, you said it's a gross slate. You said it's a weak slate. And part of that is there's not a lot of guys all the way at the top who are standing out as, you know, really sexy plays. And I think it's Kupp and Adams, and then a big tier fall off among the high priced players. So I think that weakens your team a little bit. And I just love Adams. Like I said, I mean, like on paper, it's so hard to argue against Kupp, but I mean, Adams has a perfect matchup. Baltimore is down 2 starting perimeter cornerbacks. They're top 5 against slot wide receivers. That's a tough matchup for Allen Lazard. They're absolutely getting decimated by opposing wide receiver ones, giving up 21 fantasy points per game to wide receiver ones over their last 7. But those wide receivers collectively average just 14.6. And I mean, Adams, he was a little, there wasn't much of a ceiling to start the year, but he's hit the 100-yard bonus in 3 straight games, averages 30.7 DK over that span, 9 targets in 10 of his last 11. So I'm interested to see what this does to my lineup and what it does to yours. But I feel good about this right now.
So I was expecting, I was like, I figured you were going to take Cooper Kupp, and I was going to say, okay, I'll get Devontae Adams. Like, I think Kupp is way better. I'm a bit shook at this point. Like, I'm going to build a good lineup. I like what I've got left on the table, but now I've got to figure out, how can I apply pressure to you, knowing feeling what I think you have to fit with only 4,500 left. Obviously you have a defense that's going to raise that a little bit, but like I could take another value wide receiver here. The problem is, what do I get? Right? It's the James Conner question that I was asking from the first 6 weeks of the season. Like, when James Conner hits, what do you win really, when he was just carrying the ball 12 to 15 times, had no usage in the passing game? Like, even if he has a 2-touchdown game, great. You got 19, 20 points, and it didn't matter all that much because there's plenty of running backs that were getting 25 plus. So like, if I take this other value that's out there that I believe is a solid value, I can't spend. I can't get to spend the rest of the money that I want to spend to get there. So like, blocking your value play, like it's actually a really good pick by you to go with those two, because I can't, with Davis, I can't take the other guy realistically and have money to spend at run. It's not like I can say, okay, look, I'm going to do that. I'm going to take Jonathan Taylor. There's no freaking Jonathan Taylor on this slate for me to take. All right. So I'm going to take a running back in this spot, because I know that I know you can't take this other guy. I'm going to take Elijah Mitchell. Massive volume and 6,200 on DraftKings, shows prowess in the passing game. I'm of the belief that Deebo Samuel cannot keep scoring 30-plus yard rushing touchdowns every single week. I hate what they've done to my beautiful boy. They've taken him from like a 32% target market share guy, and they're like, let's just give him 3 targets and then hand him the ball a lot. That'll be fun. And we don't even hand it to him a lot. We're going to give it to him like 5 times. That's good. Let's just get him like 5 targets and 3 carries. So all the while giving Elijah Mitchell a ton of usage, and that's what I look for. I want volume over everything, inclusion in the passing game, at home, favored, soft defense, inside the 5 carries. Yes, he will seed maybe 1 or 2 a game, or 1 or 2 to Debo, but realistically speaking, Elijah Mitchell is one of the best values on the board at running back, so I'm going to lock him up and send it back to you. 6,200. I got 5,700 remaining. I got money I can spend, and I know what you can't spend on, which makes my life a little bit easier.
Yeah, so I think that was a great pick. Can you just remind me and the listeners what happens if Elijah Mitchell gets ruled out?
So if a player is out on the weekend, I can pivot. I can swap them out for somebody at the same price.
Got it. And there's some strategy.
Or less. Same price or less. Yeah, but I never I don't try to like you could angle shoot it. Right.
Right.
And I never do that. I try to play it as straight up as possible. You can say, okay, I'm going to pick a guy and leave myself optionality. Like there was one spot earlier this year where Henderson Jr. was going to be he was questionable. And then you knew that Sony was going to be the guy behind him. So if you were to take if you were to take Henderson and then if he was out, you could just pivot to Sony. That makes sense. Right. But I'm not doing it okay, I just want to lock in a 6K running back, and if he's out, I don't care. I honestly do love Mitchell this week. He's one of my favorite plays on the week. And what I've read is they expect him to be back, but we'll find out.
Yeah, I just want to remind the listeners too, this is really tricky to do on a Wednesday. Mm-hmm. There's so many plays where it's there's missing variables where if we had news that we'll get on Saturday, if we got that today, certain plays would be much better values. If we knew Daniel Jones was going to play, he's definitely not, then Sterling Shepard would be one of the best plays of the slate. Mm-hmm. But just an example, there's a lot of plays like that. But yeah, so you took Gabriel Davis, who is far and away, I thought, the best wide receiver value of the slate. I'll have to take the guy I think is number 2. And that's Devontae Parker, who's he just looks like a really strong value to me. Mm-hmm. He ranks 49th in salary. He's seen at least 7 targets in 5 of 5 healthy games, 65 yards per game, ranks 12th in targets per game. Again, just 49th in wide receiver salary. So I'll just grab the value at that position there.
And he's playing the Jets. Right. Anytime you play the Jets, you should be in play. That's the way it works, right? That's the rule. If you play the Jets, you should just be in play. So Devontae Parker, last week was the first week that he both played with Waddle and did not out target Waddle, right? The first game they've both been active.
Probably. I mean, he only played really in the early first half. So mm-hmm. you could just argue that, Waddle's now the alpha wide receiver 1, and, rookie wide receivers tend to be slow starters. Their breakout comes in the second half. So there is some risk there, but he's just a strong value, and I need value.
I agree. No, he is on my list of value wide receivers. He's not the extreme value guy like Gabe Davis is, but he is definitely a value at his price, 4,300 on the week. I'm going to lock in. I think that this guy is one of both of our favorite players, right? I could be wrong, but I love Deontay Johnson as a fantasy asset on DraftKings. He's so good. You remember when people said you can't draft him because he drops the ball a lot? That was fun times, wasn't it?
I have him everywhere, and I have him in DFS every single week. Mm-hmm. DraftKings finally moved him up to
7,500. The second
he's still cheap. But he was mispriced by 1,000 or more for seemingly 8 straight weeks.
All year. Last week he was not on the main slate. He was on a Thursday night football game. He has not been over 7,000 this year one time. He topped out at 6,900 in week 9. Every other week, 68 or down. They finally got him up on the Thursday through Monday slate last week to 7,100. He's 75 now, so he's closer to being priced properly at this point, at least. Where like before, he was priced basically at what his at about 3x his salary on average.
Yeah. So I talked about how Cooper Kupp is having a historic season. Deontay Johnson is seeing the best volume of any wide receiver in at least 15 seasons, second only to Calvin Johnson's 2008 when he saw 204 targets. He's seen double-digit targets in 20 of his last 22 games with Ben Roethlisberger under center, stripping away games where he got hurt in the first quarter, that one weird game where he got benched for drops. Most consistent player in fantasy, him and Kupp, bar none, and the matchup's incredible. Tennessee's secondary is getting destroyed. Second worst in schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. So he was one of my top plays. And, I did take those two premium wide receivers for you, but Deontay Johnson and one or two other guys within that tier, I think are pretty strong values.
So with you taking the other two premium guys, I get the premium wide receiver that's at a discount. You saw that both chat and YouTube, you guys saw 9,000, 8,900. I'm not saying that Deontay Johnson is the level of wide receiver, either IRL or fantasy wise, as Cooper Kupp, who's averaging 27.6, and Devontae Adams averaging 22.5. But if I get to pay $1,400 less than Devontae Adams for a 19 plus point average guy, I'm going to take that discount all day. And I'm kind of forced to because I can't take Devontae Adams or Cooper Kupp in this matchup.
So yeah, I absolutely love that pick. I'm still desperate for value because I spent all my salary with my first two picks, and I don't have a running back. You took Elijah Mitchell from me, so I'm going to go Michael Carter. And there's a lot of pros and cons you can make with this play, but the bottom line is I think 4,700 is too cheap for a guy, given the recent success he's had prior to injury over his last 5 games. He averaged 18.7 fantasy points per 4 quarters, 20.5 XFP, about 15 carries, 7 targets. Wasn't quite a bell cow, but that's just really good volume. And of course, Mike White kind of bolstered those stats, and Tevin Coleman was out, but 4,700, and I need the value, so I'm gonna take him.
Yeah, look, I love the pass catching running backs. That's just shocker, right? That the guy who plays on Draftkings for the majority of his work, in DFS, likes the pass catching running backs where full PPR and bonuses are so supremely important. And when he was getting the volume those few weeks before he left, right, he was leading them in target market share, which is like Alvin Kamara status, right? 11 to 15 carries, but 6, 7 plus targets. 9 targets in week 7, 14 targets in week 8, 6 targets in week 10 against Buffalo. That was the game he got hurt, wasn't it? No, that was week 11. His price has come down. That to me does not make sense. Your price should not come down due to injury. Where if he is activated this week, he's designated to return. If he's active this week, he should probably be somewhere around 55 to 5,800, and he's not. So big time value there, leaving you 4,600, but you have a defense, so you can go a different route. I've got Deontay Johnson in this spot. God, I kind of want to. Do I have to lock myself into a thing here? Like, I kind of feel like I do. So, like, I could take one of the running backs off the board because I feel like you're going to want to go in this running back spot. But man, the floor ceiling on a couple of these guys is so bad, right? Yeah. Like Melvin Gordon, if Melvin Gordon doesn't play, I absolutely love Javonte Williams. If Melvin Gordon does play, Javonte Williams takes a massive hit in his touch expectation. We saw, hell, you might be going for Saquon, but I doubt it. But like, you being a Giants fan, I would like to make you watch a Giants game.
So Sharon told me you like to inflict pain by
as much as possible.
Drafting someone's players from their favorite team. Yeah, go ahead and take all the Giants. Saquon with his gimpy ankle. Be my guest.
I look for angles to inflict as much pain as I possibly can, but like when you're playing against a Giants fan, like haven't you already had as much pain inflicted as possible this year? Like there's nothing I can possibly do on this video to make you feel more pain than that franchise. What if they fire Gettleman? That would actually be that's not even pain. That would be like, hey man, this is great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Are you going to replace him? Or like, am I getting some alpha here? Are you going to replace Gettleman as the GM?
That would be amazing.
That would be beneficial for the team, probably.
I hope so.
Yeah. All right. I'm left with two what I believe are ugly kind of decisions here. I think there's a couple of decisions here that I have to make that are possibly very ugly. I'm left with two choices. Neither of them is good. Both of them are probably best in slot. And neither of them are good. It's so bad this week. And like there's another one, well, like I don't even know if he's going to be active because his entire team's got COVID. Screw it. I'm just going to take George Kittle. I don't like to lock up my tight end spot this early. And you took the two premium wide receivers. So I'm just going to take the other guy who's getting a ton of usage in the passing game and with a fully operational battle station in San Francisco at that. With everybody active, Debo, Ayuk, Mitchell was there for one game. They used Wilson in the other one. This is the way that they want to move right now. And it's basically their offense is going through George Kittle through the air, Debo being used as a gadget player, which again, I can't believe what they massacred my beautiful boy. And just handing the ball off a ton to Eli Mitchell. So I'm going to lock in George Kittle here, hoping that he still gets 7-8 plus targets this week at a differentiating position where you're going to have to go value. And there is value, but the opportunity for me to get 20 plus points or 25 plus points out of George Kittle here against the Falcons, and you hoping possibly with what I think you have to spend at tight end, hoping to get like 9 points. This to me is a very differentiating pick on this particular matchup against you. So you're going to have to wait, as this is a 1 p.m. kickoff game here on the West Coast, 4 p.m. on the illegitimate East Coast time slate. George Kittle, you're going to have to sit around and wait to see where the touchdowns get scored. And I'm hoping at least 2 of them get scored by Mitchell plus Kittle with all the targets going to Georgie boy.
Yeah, 27 targets over the last 2 weeks.
A lot.
332 yards, 3 touchdowns. Just obscene numbers. I mean, it doesn't really feel like a cash play to me. But I guess pairing him with Mitchell bolsters your floor. I don't know. That's interesting. That's interesting.
Like I don't like a lot of the cheaper tight end. Like I don't like a lot of the super value tight ends. And the mid-price ones, like probably my favorite one in the mid-price range is like Goddard at 5,300 against Washington, right? Where he's coming off of a massive game, but needs multiple touchdowns to get there because he's never going to get the volume of targets in that particular offense that Kittle gets.
Yeah, you said I'm probably going cheap and hoping for 9 points. I'm going to be happy with like 3 points where I'm going at tight end, but yeah, I also like Freiermuth. I feel like he's been
solid all year.
Yeah, he's still cheap. Yeah, so I'm really grateful you didn't block me on this. I thought you were gonna block me on this because I see the quarterback plays this week as really like narrowed down to 3, where it's Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, and then the guy I'm taking, because again, I still need the value. I'm going to take Tua Tagovailoa to pair with Parker, who I already have. In full games started and finished, he averages 19.1 fantasy points per game, or 19.6 per 4 quarters. That would rank 7th or 8th best on the slate. He's QB 12 by pricing, so like already straight off the bat seems like a great value. But Miami's implied point total is 31% more than their per game average. do I just apply that to Tua? It feels like a good bet. The Jets ranked dead last in opposing passer rating, bottom 5 in schedule adjusted fantasy points per game allowed. 9 of the last 10 QBs they've faced have reached at least 18.5 fantasy points. That implies over 3x value. Only one of those quarterbacks ranks top 10 in fantasy points. And then Myles Gaskin, Phillip Lindsay, Salvin Ahmed, Patrick Laird, maybe Malcolm Brown, all out this week. So really like Tua.
It's almost like he's good.
He is good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's so weird that you can't have I think he's been all right. I think he's been pretty good. It's either he's a massive colossal bust or he's the greatest quarterback in football.
I hate the cliff diving aspect that everybody takes in their value assessment of quarterbacks. It's like, look, he had the most disrupted rookie year of basically any quarterback that's come into the league as a top 10 pick, right? So like a COVID offseason where they couldn't go through any mini camps, and he was recovering from hip surgery where he was not right. Then this season, they signed an elevator on the outside, right? Will Fuller is an elevator of talent at quarterback. He will make your quarterback better. There's few guys that have done that in history. Some of them are Hall of Famers like Randy Moss. Deshaun Jackson, another one who elevates their QB. Were you the one that tweeted that out a few years ago?
What's that?
Or was it Bales? Tweeted out like games where every quarterback that Deshaun Jackson has played with has seen an increase in their QBR, their quarterback rating, their yards per attempt, like everything increases, their fantasy points per game.
He's the most elite quarterback elevator I've ever seen by basically every stat. And like his yards per route run with any quarterback he's faced or he's played with, there's been like 16 and like most of them not good. Like his yards per route run was still like would rank top 10 in any season ever.
Yeah. He's very good at what he does. Like shocking that, that's the thing. So Will Fuller does that. Like the games that Deshaun Watson had played with Will Fuller, he had more fantasy points per game, higher yards per attempt. All of the underlying metrics, including his fantasy points per game, were greatly increased in games where Will Fuller played. Even if Will Fuller did not have the big game, if it was Nuke Hopkins who had the big game, Fuller does things to defensive coordinators that they don't like, and it allows the quarterback to have open lanes to throw through. So if you add Will Fuller to this, all of a sudden Tua looks a lot better. And he hasn't been there all year. And he played most of the year, half the year, without Devontae Parker as well. This was a team ready for him to kind of blast off this year, and he didn't because of all the things around him. Wide receivers matter to quarterbacks. So do offensive lines. He does not have a great offensive line and missed out on 1.5 seasons so far this year of 2 very good pass catchers. And I think he's made the best of it. I think that he is actually good. And I think that we're going to see that over the next few years of his progression in his career. So I like the pick. I like the price on him as well. And you seem to be stacking Miami and the Jets.
Yeah.
It's a bold move. We're going to see how that works out.
We'll see.
I might even take more. All right. So I got to make a pick here. You're making me pick the ugly players. Because at running back, I don't think there are anything but ugly players this week. And so I'm going to take the second role, the guy that everybody was on last week and everybody's going to run away from this week. Philadelphia, very tough on the outside the hashes. Darius Slay and company doing a good job on opposing wide receivers, but they do have that nice gooey center like a Tootsie Roll Pop. So Antonio Gibson, I'm hoping that we see the Antonio Gibson that we saw the previous 4 weeks before last week, where he was getting tons of usage on the ground and ample usage in the passing game with 13 targets in weeks 12 and 13. Now he gets Philadelphia, who has given up a boatload of fantasy points to opposing running backs this year. Can you just throw the ball to Antonio, please? Just a little bit, like 4+ targets a game. It's not even like the Derrick Henry rule where it's like, y'all just throw him like 1 screen pass a quarter. And they were doing that this year. All I want was 4 targets with Derrick Henry, and he was unstoppable, and he was getting that, and he was unstoppable. Give Antonio Gibson 4. The guy was a flipping wide receiver in college. I know he can't pass block, so don't ask him to. Let him run routes. Good things will happen. It's not like you have any good wide receivers outside of Terry McLaurin. Anyway, let the kid run around and throw him the football so you can score more points. So $6K is too cheap this week. There's not a lot at running back. They're all ugly. All the good value plays and good matchups are ugly. It just kind of is what it is. I think that we can get there with this lineup that I'm building. I've got a wide receiver, a flex, a defense, and a quarterback left to go. And I'm going to kick it back to you.
Yeah, I'm a big Antonio Gibson truther. I think it was Jim Nagy who was like, but before he got drafted, he was like, yeah, I'm hearing from NFL teams that whether there are teams interested in him on day 2 as a wide receiver, and there are teams interested in him day 2 as a running back, where it's like, oh, this guy's that good as a pass catcher. And then he's basically Washington's Derrick Henry, and he just like only gets the early down work, doesn't get targets, makes absolutely no sense to me.
Especially with their lack of talent on the outside right now, like guys that can actually eat 5, 6, 7 targets outside of McLaurin, who can't get consistent volume because of, Heineke being Heineke, like he's a backup being forced into a starter's role. Like, it is what it is. But like, if you're trying to score points, maybe get the ball into the hands of your best playmakers, and he is, outside of Terry McLaurin, their best playmaker, in my opinion. I'm not a talent evaluator.
Yeah, I mean, he's also dealing with a fractured shin, like a brutal injury. So you have to wonder how much of that is playing a role. Jonathan Williams scored a touchdown last week, bizarrely. Maybe it flared up on him or something like that.
He fumbled and they took him off the field.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay. Yeah, so I'm up. And I will continue with this to a stack. I'm going to turn it into a double stack. I'm going to take Jalen Waddle, who's been an absolute monster. Since week 9, he ranks 4th among all slate eligible wide receivers in fantasy points per game. He's just the wide receiver 12 by salary. I mean, like you said at the top, it's the Jets. It's an amazing matchup. It's a top 10 slot funnel matchup. And like I said, the big concern with Parker is, maybe Waddle is just now the alpha. He's just kicked to the curb. But in this case, I feel like I'm raising my ceiling. I'm also raising my floor a little bit. Jasicki, I mean, he's seen great volume and he has a great matchup too. He just hasn't been particularly good in his last 6 or 7 games. So feel good about this dub stack here.
All right. Fair enough.
The rest of my roster is going to be gross though.
Yeah, you've got to get another cheap running back. You went full 0 RB here, so staying true to form, and going to have to punt defense and tight end. But there are punt defenses and tight ends that are out there, so it can work. Now, this kind of locks me into a play, I think. And I don't know if I love the play or not. There's just not much. Like I said, last week I thought was a tough slate. And this week, not the same. Like, it's a tough slate, but not for the same reasons. Like, it's a tough slate because there's 11 games and a lot of the big teams are off it. Chiefs, Chargers on Thursday night. Colts on Saturday. Vikings on Monday. Saints and Bucks on Sunday night. Like, a lot of the teams that I like to go to for consistent volume and value are just not available. You just can't have them, which leads me to have to take guys that I don't necessarily like. And it makes me a little sad. I'm going to lock in another value wide receiver here to allow me to do the rest of what I feel like I need to do. I am going to take a Jacksonville Jaguar. I am going to take Laquan Treadwell, who I thought you were going to take as a value play earlier, seeing consistent volume and like 90+% of the snaps for the last 3 weeks. Treadwell is exactly who everybody thought that was going to be, the guy whose name I am not allowed to say anymore.
Is that what that was?
Yes. He's been redacted. Shirts are available in the merch store. Smizzle.tv/store if you want to go check them out. It's a nice blue and gold on a black shirt, says redacted right across the front. Just to remind you that you are not allowed to use or say can't use that name anymore. But Laquan Treadwell is sitting at 3,300 again. He was 3,200 against the Rams, scored 10 fantasy points. He was 3,400 against Tennessee, got 6 targets, scored almost 11 fantasy points. Now he gets Houston, who has not been very good. Jacksonville going back home instead of playing at the Rams and at Tennessee. And I think he's still going to play 90% of the snaps. He's going to get a good amount of targets. And if he happens to wander into that painted area at the far end of the field, he gets 6 more points for doing that. So he's been getting you value on volume alone and has not gotten there on touchdowns, which is something that I personally really like to see. Has downfield ability, 28-yard catch in week 13, 41-yard catch in week 14, and without scoring a touchdown has gotten us value. 5,200 for me. I have a good volume with Kittle and Johnson. I love the amount of volume I'm going to get on the ground with Mitchell and Gibson and the inside the 5 work. I'm going to see how I can round this lineup out, but right now it's your pick, and I want to see what you're going to come up with here.
Yeah, so I definitely don't feel great about this one, but it's going to be another Jaguars player.
Mm-hmm.
And this play is sort of reminiscent of the play I made last time we faced off, where I got mocked for it. And that player dropped 45.1 fantasy points. That was Joe Mixon.
Mm-hmm.
I cited game script dependence and how Cincinnati was expected to win that game. So James Robinson, just 6 touches last week.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's awful. Urban Meyer is going to come to his senses at some point.
No,
right?
he's not.
I know. So that's the counter. And to be fair, it's a very persuasive counter. He did see 64% of the snaps last week. This is a game Jacksonville's expected to win. The first time they've been favored since week 1. It's a 3.5 point spread. It's a near perfect matchup on paper. Texans rank worst in yards per carry allowed, worst in rushing yards per game allowed. 355 rushing yards, 5 rushing touchdowns allowed over the last 2 weeks. RB22. It's a GPP play in this cash lineup, but YOLO.
I'm never against a YOLO play. He was the cover boy on my running backs video for this week. He is theoretically should be a $5 running back. Projects to, or again, the assumption of rational coaching, which can we even assume rational coaching with Urban? But like,
yeah, assume irrational, like the worst thing possible.
Like he should get over 20 touches this week, or project to get 20 touches this week. He should get usage in the passing game. He should get the majority of their inside the 5 carries.
Carlos Hyde should get 0.
What's that?
And Carlos Hyde should get 0.
Right.
Should.
Yeah, but Carlos Hyde played at the Ohio State University. James Robinson did not. So
was that what it was?
I don't know. Maybe these. I don't know. Urban Meyer is gonna Urban Meyer. What can I tell you? James Robinson. I can't believe that this is a whole other video. Like there needs to be a 30 for 30 on just Urban Meyer from point of signing throughout the 2021 season. I want ESPN. Can we get a producer on that? Can we get a 30 for 30 on this Urban Meyer season? Would be fantastic. His body language on that handshake after the game with one of his former assistants. Yeah. Like there's layers to this. You have 2,700 left for 2 picks.
Oh boy.
I'm afraid of that wide receiver combo though. That's a very, very difficult nut for me to crack with those 2 guys. All right. I've got to find a play. And I think I kind of have to take something away from you. I have to take something off the table. And I feel like the thing that I'm going to have to take off the table is defense. So I'm going to go with, I can't believe I'm about to say this, the Jacksonville Jaguars defense at 2,800. Scoring off against whoever the hell's playing quarterback for the Houston Texans this week. I'm going to pick on the Mills Mafia anytime that I can pick on the Mills Mafia. Like if he's starting a QB, then great. If he's not, then whatever. This team is terrible offensively. They don't really have any weapons outside of Cooks. They can't do anything consistently. I played against them last week with Seattle, and then Mills completed 14 of his first 15 passes and was making me look like an idiot, and then they got throttled 38-14. So he ran hot for a quarter, and then he's like, oh, well, I remember who I am. So I expect him to keep remembering who the hell he is. And Jacksonville's defense, aside from allowing a ton of rushing yards, which I mean, maybe we should all be picking Rex Burkhead this week, but probably not. Jacksonville's defense, one of the better sub 3K defenses, and it allows me to kind of take one of those plays away from you on the defensive side, which is something that you have left, and make you pick a little bit worse defense, possibly. Maybe you have to pick the Giants defense. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, so I watched your first look video. Do you think this is the best value defense because you pivoted off of Buffalo, or was this just a case of you needed to make everything else work?
So first look, I don't put a lot of time into picking a defense on first look
because I think you nailed it. I think Bills are far and away the best. Defense.
The Bills are gross. They're in a great spot. They're at home. Carolina's struggling. Like Cam Newton's been awful. Like I picked Jaguars here to block you essentially. I think that the optimal defense is probably the Bills or Miami because is Zach Wilson good?
Man, I think it might be a case where like in a year or two he's amazing, but he's definitely not good right now.
Like he does fun things, right? Like when I say this, I'm going to get a lot of heat for this. I'm not saying he's Brett Favre. Okay. But he makes year 1, 2, 3 Brett Favre decisions, right? Where he's got all the arm talent in the world. And in high school and in college, he could just throw off balance with no base. He could, a window is there and he could just stuff it through that window. Those windows aren't there in the NFL, but he's still trying to do that. So maybe when his head catches up, he'll be fine. Like, don't forget, Brett Favre had like a 28 touchdown, 29 interception year early in his career for Green Bay. I think we could see something like that, like next year from Wilson before he actually starts to calm down and become like a not dumb quarterback. Like right now, he's just making dumb decisions.
Yeah, he was also comped to Aaron Rodgers for the off-script plays he can make. A few even like crazy comps to Mahomes, but the common denominator between all three of those guys is
arm
we all
talent.
sat for a number of years early on.
Yeah, and massive arm talent on all of them.
Yeah,
like they can just make throws that other guys can't make off of like deplatformed throws at that, right? Like they don't need their feet under them and bouncing and moving up in the pocket to get the ball to all the spots on the field where they want to get it. But like he's just, he looks like he's 14 and he plays like a 14-year-old playing in the NFL.
Yeah. So maybe there's some upside there once he's finished with puberty. Who knows?
Yeah. Like once he gets a growth spurt, he'll be all right.
All right. I'll just take my defense then. I'll take the Panthers just because they're cheap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. The cheapest one on the board. And you got a 3,000 for a tight end.
Okay. So that's 100 off of CJ Uzoma. I'll take Brevin Jordan, 6 targets, 4 catches, 26 yards and a score. Brooks Cubena, one of the Texans beat writers for the Chronicle, talked about how David Culley has been hyping him up like crazy. Do you want to let him loose? More versatile weapon in the passing game that helps the offense. And my rookie tight end prospect model liked him. Wasn't in love with him. Thought he was a little raw, but did like him. So I think there's some upside there. And really, he just lets me fit all of those expensive wide receivers and everyone else.
He's playing, right? Like he's on the field and he's getting targets, 14 targets the last 3 weeks, and he's sub 3K. So on DraftKings with full PPR, if he catches 3-4 balls, it's hard for him to fail at that price, right? And the upside is tremendous. Like 2 of the last 3 weeks, he's caught a touchdown, which puts him in a spot where like he can get things done. So let me see what I've got left. That's going to finish off your lineup. Tua Tagovailoa, Carter, Robinson, Kupp, Adams, Parker, Jordan, Waddle, going full stars and scrubs with this one, but I don't hate it on this slate at all. I've got 6,500 remaining per player. So I've got a few things that I could do here. Get Wilson off my screen. Get him all the way out of here. So like, I think I could fit Kyler and then go with, just find a flex, right? Like I could do that and go with somebody down in this range. but like I don't like this range as much as I like a little bit higher, which leaves me a cheaper quote. We don't know about Josh Allen right now. Jalen Hurts is expected to play. Love him. I
will say on that,
mm-hmm.
a little birdie told us.
Ooh, I like birdies.
No lock to play this week.
Really?
So do not be shocked if it's Minshew season for one more week.
Okay. Well, that would open up a ton of value.
Injury, not benching because of injury.
No. Yeah, he's the QB1. So now game theory. We mentioned it's funny that we teased this early in the show. It seemed extraneous at the time. But it was maybe foreshadowing of what's going to come, because if I take Jalen Hurts here, I want Jalen Hurts and I want him to play. But if Jalen Hurts does not play, I could pivot easily to Dak Prescott at 6,500. That leaves me with Minshew. There's plenty of quarterbacks that are lower. I just think that Dak Prescott would be the other guy I'm flipping at that price point. You know, there's Burrow there against Denver. There's Wilson against the Rams. There's, historically they've sucked against the Rams and Wilson has not been great. That allows me a little bit more to spend on a flex. God, DK Metcalf is so frustrating.
I'm not loving your options.
I don't love them at all. I told you I hate this slate. This slate sucks. This slate is gross. Especially in a format like this one, right?
Oh, do you know who I would take easily? But you're back in that tricky situation again with the injuries. Is DeAndre Swift? I think it's unlikely he plays, but if he does play, he might be the best overall value of the entire slate.
I'm going to do this though. I'm going to do this a little differently. I'm going to take. God, I could take Amari Cooper and Dak Prescott and just piss you off against the Giants. I'm going to take T. Higgins and I'm going to take Dak Prescott here. I know that T. Higgins against Denver has been tough, but I would expect the toughest matchup to go to Jamar Chase, who has basically been cooking everybody all year long. But T. Higgins has done very well in his own right all season long, blossoming as a second-year wide receiver into a very productive fantasy player, 15.7 fantasy points per game. And Dak Prescott, solid bounce back week for him after 2 duds on the road for 2 straight weeks against Washington and New Orleans, on the road again against the Giants, but the Giants a much friendlier landing spot with a full cadre of weapons on the outside and a limping Ezekiel Elliott, to say the least. So give me Dak Prescott. I've got Mitchell, Gibson, Davis, Johnson, Treadwell, Kittle, Higgins, and Jaguars. You have a much higher profile. You have a much more star-studded lineup than me, but I do like the chances that I have with the amount of targets that I have coming and carries on my team as well. It's going to be a fun match. We're playing for $100 donated to charity. Guys, go follow Scott on Twitter and go check out fantasypoints.com. Scott, thank you for joining me again this year. We're going to see how it plays out this weekend.
Awesome.
All right, guys, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and look out for another one right there.
He's a legend.